Warning. This episode contains adult language and adult humor.
Since when have trumpet players ever been considered adults?
If you are easily offended by these types of conversations, consider switching to the oboe. Welcome to the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast. I'm your host, Jose Johnson. My guest for this episode is Dan Fornero. From studios to stadiums across the globe, Dan always brings the heat. Dan is a founding member of the Vine Street Horns, and since 2003 has also been an integral part of the powerhouse trumpet section of the Big Phat Band. Dan has toured the world with Phil Collins, Neil Diamond, Tom Jones, and Brian Setzer, and has carved out a name for himself as one of the top flight players in the LA recording scene. So, pour yourself a big glass, pull up a chair, and let the hang begin. Welcome to this episode of the Trumpet Gurus Hang, and I'm joined today by Mr. Dan Fornero. Dan, what's going on, man?
Hey, nice to see you, man. Thanks for having me.
Ooh, it is my pleasure. You are certainly a great guy to talk to. You have quite the impressive resume, I must say, and I've been fortunate enough. I think we met just briefly once, but I've been fortunate enough to, have conversations and have friendships with people that you run in the same circles with. And everybody that I talk to about you that knows you, worked with you, has just had nothing but glowing things to say about you, not just as a player, but as a person. So, I really appreciate you taking time to talk with us today. So, with being in LA at this point, and especially in this COVID world that we're dealing with, what kind of changes have you been seeing going on in the industry? As a multiple part question, what changes you've seen in the industry, and how have you managed to keep your game, at that top level, despite all of the confusion and the craziness that's going on around us?
Well, I mean, the industry is taking a huge hit. I'm sure you're all aware. I mean, they've shut everything down entirely, and for a minute there was, for several months, no studios are open. They're trying to figure out all of the, the protocol for COVID and all of that. How do we put a bunch of people in one room with bad ventilation and keep them from killing each other, or shutting this down forever, or for longer anyway. And so a lot of the only work that existed for a while was people would call in and ask, can you record at home? Are you set up for that? Which most people are today. I mean, if there's one thing we've all learned through COVID, it's how to manage audio, And so primarily the work I've done has been from here for several months, where I'm just in my room recording for different writers and projects. But as of recent, the studios have begun to open up a little bit, and protocols are in place where everybody's obviously, socially distant. They want you to keep a mask on when you're not playing. Sometimes they put things on the floor for you to empty your spit valve in. They'll put you in plexi around you whenever possible. They'll set up a room, for example, for a date with an orchestra. They'll record the strings first, typically, but they'll set the room up for an entire orchestra. But keeping strings, a lot of strings in a large room, socially distant, takes up all the space. So, but if they don't set up the rest of the room for the brass and woodwinds and all of that at the same time, as they set up the strings, then as I understand it, they have to reset the room, which means cleaning it and sterilizing it before they set up for brass. So they do it all at once, get the strings out of there. We're already got our stuff set in place, and then we come in separate from them and record that way. They have, in this door only, out that door only. Don't use this bathroom anymore. There's no more food at the table, for breaks to have a little snack. And it's just, it's way different. And there's not as much work, clearly. but it's starting to pick up. I actually had a pretty busy week this week, almost like old times kind of week, with different projects and some TV, and so it was good to get back. But part of your question was, how do I stay in shape to to be at peak level, and I don't. I mean, I practice a lot, but there's nothing quite like getting in there and having to approach the music from a recording point of view. It's just different than playing Clark studies at home. It's just different, and not having to blend with other musicians is different. So trying to tuck my sound into the blend properly and approach the music properly and be as accurate as possible is different than running, calisthenic exercises and the things that I work on to maintain any sort of, endurance and strength.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not hired too often to play, soft and gentle, which is a good thing. The kind of trust me, but the kind of the stuff that I'm typically hired for, I have to be prepared in a strength sort of endurance way. So the things that I practice to maintain that is a different approach to the instrument than it is when I'm recording. And so that skill set is lacking right now, and getting back in there quite a bit this week was great. I was like, oh my God, I needed this. It's a confidence boost, to say, okay, I'm back in this. I know how to do this. I remember this, it's been a long time. I mean, since March, everything shut down pretty hardcore,
Yeah. I just had I guess this is officially my second gig of the year. And it was just really odd, just playing, and you develop those gig chops or road chops or studio chops, however you want to call them. When you're working consistently, it's easy to get in, but when you have all that time off, there's the physical part of it, obviously, but there's also that mental side of it, of sometimes the uncertainty creeps in, and I think trumpet players as a whole tend to have some of the most fragile egos in the world. Because the demands of the instrument are so insane, and especially for someone like you playing the kind of stuff that you get called for mostly, there's no room for uncertainty in what you're doing. So
yet it exists. It's playing through that uncertainty that is really the deal. You know what I mean? Because we all have it to some degree.
Right.
I have it. I think I have it considerably more than other guys. Most of the guys I work with, I think they're just absolutely fearless, and But I was also taught, don't judge your insides by other people's outsides, And then I talk to people about it, and I go, how you feeling, man? I mean, man, that's some scary stuff you did there. He goes, yeah, the guy will say, yeah, I know, but I got through it anyway, So we play through that uncertainty. But you're right. I mean, the more I know that what I'm about to do and got my head wrapped around it right, and I can hear the pitch in advance, and I got my routine set up, and it goes, and the air's moving, and bam, and it's hitting that. The more certainty of that, the better the golf shot's going to be. I mean, it's basically what it is,
Yeah. So do you have a specific kind of mental approach that you take towards playing? I mean, everybody's got a warm up. They've got their warm ups, they've got their technical practice skills, but not a whole lot of people talk about the mental aspect of playing, what you do to prep yourself for either a gig in general or just the general approach to the horn. But do you have something that you kind of can point to and say, yeah, this is the process that I use to keep myself in the game?
Man, if there's any aspect of what I need to work on as a musician, it's that, it is my weak spot for sure. I'm a bit of a head case, frankly. And, I'm able to play at a very high level through a lot of fear. And it's very uncomfortable a lot of the time for me, frankly. I wish it wasn't. There was a time in my life when I was fearless, when I was young, and it's just, I think as more is demanded out of, that's not the right way to say that, but the more that I feel is expected of me, I feel the more pressure to come up with those goods, and that gets in my own way.
Mhm.
So, if I'm on my way to work, I'm focusing my car is my sanctuary. And in Los Angeles, with traffic being it's typically I'll have an hour to get to anywhere. So I take that time often and focus my thought on right thinking, and affirmative prayer, if you will, and kind of steering my thoughts into the right directions, and into the faith and out of the fear. When I get to work, I try to remember to breathe. Try not to try not to be the biggest voice in the room. Just try to stay focused and do my best. Keep my head down, do my best. That's it's a wonderful experience to be concerned, nervous, scared, all of those things about a musical passage that you can play, and getting through it really, really well is one of the greatest feelings of exhilaration there is. So I've been taught that to bless the fear. It can be your friend. It's the thing that keeps you honed. It's the thing that keeps you focused. It's the thing that's going to not allow you to fail. I feel like I play better when I'm completely relaxed and I'm not worried about anything. And certainly there's truth in that, but I can also become lackadaisical in that setting.
Right.
So there's times where you're just going, where's that edge, man? I don't have that edge today. That might be that little fear spark. It's when I can let it get in front of me and take over that trouble happens. But most of the time, it can be a nice, nice tool for focus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that it's finding that kind of razor's edge of where you're using the fear or anxiety, whatever you want to call it, to keep you sharp and keep you on your game, because that's what it's for. I mean, that's part of our in terms of our evolution. That's part of what allowed us to survive is that fear reflex. But if it becomes detrimental to us, it's that's going to be our source of failure. So it's like, how do you stay in that sweet spot of you've got enough edge to move you forward, but not so much that it pulls you back, or the lackadaisical side of, hey, I got this, and then you can become sloppy and then it all goes to hell anyway. So that,
dance.
yeah, it like you say, yeah, man, it is the dance, and some of us just don't have enough rhythm to pull that one off. So, but so in the studio world, it's kind of it's a really interesting environment, especially in LA, because to many people, I'm sure my friends in New York and London and Nashville are going to disagree with me this, but LA is kind of the mecca for the recording industry, for music and for television and movies and things like that. So if you could make it in LA, that is something to be said. So with that situation, though, it's kind of different than me, like being a trumpet player in a small town where you kind of get pigeonholed, like, oh, he's the lead player, he's the jazz player, he's the legit player. You're called on to do so much in any given session or in a series of sessions in a day. And you're going to have to go from, playing lead to playing second to playing third. And that, I know that requires a little bit of a mind shift in terms of how you approach your parts. How do you manage to do that, to go from, being the guy to being the support guy? Is that a mental process that you do have to go through? Is it something that you've had to work to develop a skill for, or is this something that you just always been kind of comfortable with?
It's a really good question, but the truth is I'm much more comfortable being the support guy. I like playing second trumpet, third trumpet. I like playing some first trumpet. So that's a skill set in itself that I really enjoy. I like being able to fit into the goo of the blend. I think that's the real key of it all. The more I practice playing the trumpet as properly as I can, as opposed to trying to just get out higher notes or, be more of a beast. It's the more I practice on the right side of the horn, as I call it, the better all of my other playing goes. It's never the other way around, So I don't sit and work on being a lead trumpet player, or, trying to get that act together so much as I really, practice with using air attacks. When I practice, I don't practice real loud. I work on technical studies to maintain technique as well as build endurance, but I do them in a soft, controlled way the best I can. I do practice those exercises into the upper staff, where I make necessary shifts to pull them off. As I get more and more tired, I keep practicing. So that kind of helps build the endurance. It kind of takes care of the beast side of things. But the approach to the instrument is always from a more orchestral point of view, because that way, when I get in a setting of an orchestral environment, I'm not going to be, first of all, I won't be called for principal trumpet. There are guys who are really, really dazzling out here who you're privileged to play with, who I'm privileged to play with. And so when I sit with them, my job is to fit into their world the best I can. And I have to work on things like air attacks and how to, stay in the center of the sound and understand what that blend is. That is the key to staying employed here, is playing well with others. There was a time in LA, when I was a kid and television was all the rage, and I'm talking, 60s and 70s, where the guys who were doing most of the work were the big band trumpet players.
Right.
And that shifted. And the town became more orchestrally oriented. I'm speaking now about film and television. Mm-hmm. And so as that happened, the skill set for anybody who wants to freelance is you better be able to play on the pretty side of the trumpet too, So I've kind of had to, my background, coming from drum corps and then into jazz, then into big band, and then at North Texas and lead trumpet and Woody Herman lead trumpet and all this lead trumpet stuff I did. I've had to go, okay, listen, man, you got to get back to what started you, getting down to the basics of playing trumpet properly. Right. And as I do that, everything else seems to improve. Like I was saying earlier, it never goes the other way around. It's like trying to be a hip hop dancer, and all you practice is hip hop. Ballet is going to be impossible. But if you're a good ballet dancer, you might be able to pull off hip hop a lot better. It's to go that direction. Yeah. So that's kind of how I need to approach things. I need to maintain the skill set of what people mostly think of me. You mentioned the word pigeonholed. There's I wouldn't say it's pigeonholed here, but there are people who go, okay, look, if you want this kind of player, you know who to call, and hopefully when my name comes up, they'll say, hey, he mostly does this well, but he's capable in this arena too. We can keep him in on
right. Yeah. I mean, we all tend to have things that we gravitate towards, or that we certainly, have that are our strongest suits. It's always trying to keep the strong and then build up the areas that are lacking, and whether that's in music or in life and any other endeavor. That's the key to being truly successful, I think, is to shore up those blind spots, either whether they're in yourself, by doing the work yourself, or in some cases it's surrounding yourself with the right team. If you're a manager at a company and you suck at marketing, well, you either need to learn how to be a better marketer, or you need to hire somebody who's really great at marketing to work with you. So, I think that's been one of the things that, as I've talked to more guys out there in LA, that's been kind of that consistent theme of everybody working together to make the project work, and kind of putting the egos in check and just making sure that the right guys on the right parts, and making sure that everything is working together. Actually, Wayne, our mutual friend Wayne Bergeron, Wayne was mentioning how he loved playing with you because you two lock up so well. And he's like, hey, if I've got a line and it goes up to a high F, and Dan's sitting next to me, I know that we're going to hit that, and we're going to be in tune, and we're going to be in sync with each other. And that there's a lot that goes into that, and I think sometimes people miss the point that it is about learning how to work as a unit, as a cohesive unit. and that, I mean, that's kind of high praise coming from anybody, but particularly like Wayne, who just says, yeah, this is the guy. I love sitting next to this guy because we're going to bring out the best in each other.
Well, that's really nice to hear. But I feel exactly the same way. I think the skill set that keeps you working in town, like I said earlier, is to be able to play well with others. I mean, Wayne Bergeron not only used that for the title of one of his albums, but in fact is a really great second trumpet player. You know what I mean? Occasionally he'll throw me some lead trumpet in the Phat Band or on a date we're on or whatever. And now he's no longer lead trumpet. He doesn't play like a lead trumpet player when he's not playing lead trumpet. He knows how to respect what the other guy's doing, how to fit his way into that. With him and I, it's a very little needs to be said about how we're going to approach something musically. There's a little bit of we're sort of on the same page that way. I try to get out of his way when he's playing lead. And what it was explained to me, it was mentioned when I was in North Texas, and it was the 6 o'clock band, and I was the new lead trumpet player. There were 9 bands. I was in the 6th one, and I was moving up, man, and it was a good day, And the first day we got in there, the lab band director at that time was a guy named Steve Spencer, rest his soul, who was the jazz tenor player in 1 o'clock at the time. And he said, this is Dan Fornero. He's your new lead trumpet player. He said, your job is to all make him sound good. And I like that. And that's the truth. If you're not playing first trumpet, your job is to make that guy sound good. If you're not playing lead alto, your job is to make sure that guy sounds good. Because if lead alto, lead trombone, first trumpet sound good in a big band, your band's going to rock. You know what I mean? And so it's really you have to take a submissive sort of support role, which is very, very satisfying musically. It's not always about being the hero. It's about being part of that team you mentioned and bringing the best out of the music. I mean, ultimately, that's all it's ever about.
Yeah. That's what it's supposed to be all about, at least. That and the Lamborghinis that you guys are all driving around out there.
Which one?
What day is this? This is the red Lamborghini day, I think, isn't it?
I'm a Mini Cooper driver myself.
All right. That works. You're talking about North Texas and your days in corps. I want to actually go back to your days in corps, and it seemed to me, I never marched corps. I had a lot of friends who did. I thought about it, but I just didn't have the cash to do it. So. It's like, I can either, work this summer and make money or go play and not make money. So I chose to work. But with corps, a lot of the guys that I know that have come out of it and that are still playing, they're playing at a professional level. A lot of them do express how the esprit de corps really has been beneficial to them in terms of their musicality. Being part of a bigger team, being part of an ensemble, and understanding your role in that. Who did you march with, and how did your days in the corps influence you as a player and as a person?
Well, I marched in 2 drum corps. The first one was a feeder corps for the bigger corps. Excuse me. There's in Racine, Wisconsin. I'm from Kenosha, Wisconsin, and 10 miles north of Kenosha is a city called Racine, which at that time they labeled themselves the drum corps capital of the world.
Ah, yes.
And there was a lot of drum corps going on in Wisconsin in the early 70s, mm-hmm. and in the 70s and 60s, and the Kilties were a very highly competitive junior drum bugle corps. Competed really well with Santa Clara Vanguard, the Blue Devils, and all of that back in the early 70s, the Troopers, Chicago Cavaliers, and the Madison Scouts, and all of that stuff. We were that corps was, no joke, man. They were always right in there, if not winning. And they had a feeder corps called the Kilty Cadets. And they were for kids from 10 to 14 years old. And then once you're 14, you could join the Kilties, which was a group from 14 to 21 years old. And so before I was born, my father formed a drum and bugle corps in Kenosha, Wisconsin for guys over 21 called the Kenosha Kingsmen. And he was a founding member of that, him and his buddy, John Vagnoni. They were pals from childhood, and they both got drafted into Korea and made a pact that if they made it out alive, they would form a drum and bugle corps, which they did. And so my first memories growing up were watching them rehearse, listening to them rehearse, marching with them when somebody couldn't make it. And by the time I was 10 years old, I wanted to play a bugle so bad I couldn't stand it. And I wanted to be just like those guys. And so I joined the Kilty Cadets, and I marched with them for 4 years. And about a year and a half into that, I started playing trumpet. I played bugle before I played trumpet. I was going to a Catholic school, and they didn't have a band program. So I left the Catholic school and went into the public school system to learn trumpet. And that story is told in 4 verses on the first track of my album.
Yes.
Not So Old School. The song's called Gonna Be Fine. And basically everything I'm telling you here is in that song.
Which is a great song, by the way, if you haven't heard. And it's a great CD, album, whatever you want to call it these days, whatever the kids are calling it these days. It's great. But that track especially, I mean, that to me, it spoke to me in so many different ways. So
yeah, I could thank Wally Minko and Gary Grant for a lot of help putting that together. But when I was 15, I was able to join the Kilties, and I marched with them for 1 year. And we went to the DCI, which was in its 3rd year of existence. And it was a big trip for us from Wisconsin to Ithaca, New York for Cornell University. And I think we placed 4th in prelims out of, 60 drum corps or something at that time. And we were poised, man. We were only a few points back, and we thought we could win it all. And we ended up going overtime in the finals and ended up taking 6th. And it was awful. And I'd spent, at 15 years old, I spent 1/3 of my life in drum corps and the other 2/3 around it, with, the business meetings going on in the basement with my dad's corps and all the rehearsing. And, it was my entire life, and we had a shot at it, and we didn't make it, man. And it was pretty devastating. At the same time that happened, I was marching in the marching band in high school, and a very dear friend of mine who I went to high school with is John Fumo, great trumpet player here in Los Angeles. He was a couple of years older than me while still in high school, and he recommended, I asked him, how do I get more jazz into my playing? I feel like I play real square. How do I get, And he said he goes to Jamie Aebersold clinics. And so I said, well, that's what I'm going to do then, because that's what you do. Because he was on such a, I put him on such a pedestal. He was such a great trumpet player so early. And so that I knew would conflict with the following year's DCI in August. And so I quit drum corps. And it was after 5 years, I was done and started learning about theory and other things, instead of marching. How did it help me was that playing outdoors and learning how to project your sound is, I think, no doubt, one of the greatest gifts of marching all those years to anybody, especially a lead trumpet player. You're going to learn how to project your sound properly, play outside for most of the time, and you'll learn that, So drum corps was real good for me that way. Learning to play with others, of course, and all of that. But I'd say that the projection of sound is pretty key.
Yeah. Do you still follow drum corps?
Not at all. No, I have never seen a drum corps show since I marched my last one in 1974. I have seen a little bit on YouTube. I've watched, I think it's the Blue Devils do their warm up to my jaw just dropping. And my God, that's absolutely spectacular what they're doing today. Today kids audition for drum corps, and it's a big deal to get chosen. When we were marching, you'd take any warm body, and it wasn't expensive at all to do this. It wasn't a big deal at all. It was just about becoming this corps of brothers, and we put a lot of pride into being really good at marching and really good at music, and wait till you hear this, and we're coming. You better feel it. It was a really great bond that way. But it wasn't like today where it's like auditioning to get into anything else. It's very, very competitive today just to get in, and that level of perfection and pristine that they have today is dazzling. They march sideways, they march backwards. We never did that. We carried everything on the field and off the field when there was nothing on the sideline. There were no microphones or synths or, it was the reason we went overtime in '74 was because at the concert formation in the middle of our show, the timpani player had difficulty reattaching the timp to himself to march off. And he got stuck, and we were like, come on, man, let's go. He's like, and we went overtime, and it sort of sabotaged our show. But yeah, it's pretty impressive what they're doing today. The little bit I've seen of it, but I haven't followed it much at all.
Yeah, I feel like I'm becoming the grumpy old man, and it's like, that's not drum corps. With all the staging and sets and props, we had a piston and we had a rotor, and that was it. You had 1 and 2, and the bugles were in G or in A or something, I don't remember. And you couldn't play in certain keys. If you needed a third valve, that note wasn't going to happen. They'd have to revoice it. And, it was really a neat thing, man. I remember wanting to learn trumpet just to figure out what that third valve was for. Well, I tell you, I've got a 3-valve trumpet, and there's still keys I can't play in. So,
Likewise.
So let's fast forward a little bit. You're at North Texas State. Played with the 6 o'clock band and worked your way up to the 1 o'clock band. Who are some of the other cats that were down there with you? Because that was like that was the breeding ground of so many great players, not just trumpet players, but just so many great musicians came through that program around that time. So who are some of the cats that you kind of grew up with there?
Well, I mean, the first week of college, I went right out of high school there. So I was 18, and so did a guy named Greg Bissonette. And, so the first week of school, somehow we met, and, I became fast friends with Conrad Herwig and Jim Snydero, those guys went on to do some pretty great stuff. And I'm going to leave other people out that I'll be remiss to remember, but I mean, Tim Reese was in school then, Chip McNeil, just magnificent musicians, man. Paul Mazio and Rodney Booth, and Tom DeLibero was in school at the time I was there. He was the incumbent in the 1 o'clock. When I finally got to the 1 o'clock, he was the guy who left so I could get in. He took a gig in Vegas. It was insanely gifted people down there, man. Mike Smith. I don't want to leave people out, so I won't try to name everybody. But
I got you.
There were 145 trumpet majors in North Texas when I went to school in 1977 as a freshman. 145. There were 9 jazz bands. There were 5 trumpets in each band. When you auditioned for lead trumpet, jazz chair, or section chair, right? So when I got down there as a freshman, I thought I was pretty darn good by the time I got out of high school, good enough to get into North Texas. And so I did the math. You're not going to play lead trumpet. There's only 9 chairs available. The first 3 bands, those are out of reach for sure. Those guys are really, really great, and the same thing for jazz chair. I didn't have enough jazz ability to consider myself to audition for that. So I auditioned for section trumpet and did the math, on how many chairs were available. And I played what I thought was a really great audition. And I was very, very confident and very cocky. And I made 4th trumpet on the 8th band out of 9. And I was 3 chairs away from no band at all. And it was a good day. I was really, really lucky, The competition level was very, very high, man. Really, really great musicians down there on all instruments. And guys were working to get better. And the motivation to get better was, it's just a really great, vibe, of pushing each other forward, listen to albums with guys constantly, hey man, let's go check out this side, man. I'm coming over, got to hear this, man, Liebman and Grossman, man, at the Lighthouse. Whoa. I mean, it was just, here, check out Coltrane live at the Village Vanguard. You've never heard this, you're going to die,
Yeah.
We wore stuff out, man. And it was a really good environment to push each other,
No, that's awesome. Yeah. The environment has so much to do with our development, and I mean, granted, certainly you can do it in a vacuum, but it's a lot easier to do when you're surrounded by other people that are, that are passionate about the same things that you are, and you're working towards the same goals. So, what are some of the big lessons that you got out of your time there? Both in terms of being a player and just even your approach to being not just a trumpet player, but being a musician, what it means to be a working musician.
I don't really know. Honestly, the years I spent in North Texas, you're not supposed to have a whole lot of regrets in life, but one of my regrets in life is that I didn't take the school more seriously. I was very, very focused, and I had tunnel vision on one thing, and that was, I'm going to get in the 1 o'clock one day. And if I get in the 1 o'clock someday, Stan Kenton's going to call and I'm going to be able to go on his band. And that's as high as I could think. That's my goal, and I don't care if I'm playing fourth trumpet in the 1 o'clock. I got to get in that band so that I can use that as a barometer for moving to New York or moving to Los Angeles. If I can make it here, I can make it anywhere, that whole thing, North Texas is great for that.
Right.
But the truth is at the time, I ignored all of the other opportunities of the school, and I ignored them on purpose. And it's a regret of mine. The school had a magnificent symphony orchestra, wind ensemble, concert band, small ensembles, all this stuff that I absolutely avoided. All I wanted to do was play lead trumpet in the 1 o'clock band someday. Ultimately, that's what I was, really shooting for. And it was happening, everything that I tried to do, I was on an upward track. And, in the late 70s, I was a young man who partied a lot, and I mean, a lot. And I took pride in that. And as I was, really doing all the things I would tell kids not to do today, everything was going great. And I was, riding the gravy train all the way to the top. And so my advice to anybody at that time would have simply been, hey man, just put your head down, get your focus on and go for it. What I ignored were the things that would have offered me a better skill set for what I need to work today in Los Angeles. If I had more orchestral skills, when I was in high school, we had a, I don't know, 60, 80 piece symphony orchestra. I met 5 days a week, and I played in it 5 days a week, right after I played in wind ensemble 5 days a week. And all of that gave me a really good foundation on how to play properly. And I love that. When I got to North Texas, I said, I'm done with that. I'm just going to party, man, and I'm going to play lead trumpet and jazz, and this is great, and get the girls, and everything's going to go, and that's what happened, But in fact, I really denied myself a whole lot of education that would have been very, very helpful today. When I go on an orchestral date today, the other guys are playing C trumpets. I'm playing a B flat trumpet. You don't want to hear me try to sight read on a C trumpet. Those guys they're transposing on sight. All that stuff you hear them doing orchestrally, those are written in B flat parts, and they're playing C trumpets and transposing, and they're sight reading it perfectly the first time because the red light's on for every rehearsal take you do. Those guys are amazing. That's a skill set that I walked away from. I played C trumpet all the time in high school, So I really do regret that. If there's anything I learned from my experience at North Texas, is that I didn't quite take care of business like I could have. Didn't take advantage of the opportunities that were there for me. Yeah. I became a part-time student. I played in the lab bands. I did trumpet lessons because they were required. And I took jazz improvisation and then either racquetball or badminton, whatever they had available. And that's all I did. For my last 3 years of school, I was a part-time student. And I would avoid the dean. He'd come around, he'd go, hey, you going to pick up those, your ABCs and your English classes? And next semester I'm just short on cash, dean, or I see him coming down the hall, I'd go the other way. And I dodged it all,
Yeah.
And it was a bad idea. It was a bad idea. I mean, I played first trumpet in the 1 o'clock band for my last 2 years of college. So you couldn't tell me I was doing anything wrong, I had the good fortune of studying with Don Jacoby, who was not part of North Texas, but was teaching in North Dallas. And he became a mentor to me and really quite helpful in my development. So I really thought I had it all together, and I didn't need all of that. And that was definitely a bad idea.
Yeah. All the wisdom that we get as we get a little older, the hindsight, that's there. I think that's probably the one thing that I would hope that people get, and that's part of actually why I do these podcasts, is because there's so much information, there's so much knowledge that's out there from guys like you who are performing at this super high level that so many people are aspiring to, and you have so many lessons to share, and it's not as important to know how do you play a double high C in tune. It's all these sort of things of what you're talking about, taking advantage of the opportunities that you have in front of you, and developing the good kind of work ethics, and keeping your head straight, and this is the kind of stuff I think that if more players grasp that they would do so much better in the long haul. The short term maybe not, but definitely in terms of longevity and marketability, this is the stuff that's really going to make the difference.
Well, the younger guys who are coming on the scene in Los Angeles today, I mean, extraordinary trumpet players, man, and guys who weren't knuckleheads when they were 18, and they did put their heads down, and they do have the degrees, and they come in here armed with a skill set that is undeniable, and they can back it up with a master's degree or a doctorate, so that, when the music scene changes in such a way where there's not opportunity to be a player, they can compete very highly for any university job and live a really great quality of life in music. Very, very smart choices that I didn't make. See it all the time here. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Well, the difference, though, I asked about, how come you guys got your doctorates, man? What's the deal? We didn't even want a bachelor's degree when I was in college. We just wanted to play, man, and, and they said, well, because there is no Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Buddy Rich, Count Basie, all this stuff, there is no place to go where we can just drop out of school and we're in a thing. The greatest opportunity to play in all of these different kinds of ensembles exists in college. And so we stay longer and we get it right. And, all the way to the bank in the end, man, because, if I get asked to teach it at a university, I'm an adjunct, with no health care offered and a very low wage and all of that stuff, thrilled to be there and happy to teach. But at the same time, if you can walk in with, with some credentials, you can really, really take care of your family very well off things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. I mean, I'm about your age.
45.
So, was that
45?
13.
Yes. But I certainly remember, when I was in high school, I graduated in 79. I remember, Maynard's band, Woody's band, Kenton's band, the bands were touring, and you were able to go out and you were able to, listen to a big band, and that was always an aspiration for people. If you're a trumpet player, you want to be on Maynard's band or Stan's band or something like that. But those opportunities, as they disappeared, there are fewer and fewer playing opportunities for horn players, and I think that the change, that paradigm shift, has created a necessity for approaching the profession of being a player as being different. And now that we're seeing with things like with what's going on with COVID, even with live music being pretty much decimated, the number of people that have lost their jobs in New York, with Broadway shutting down, Las Vegas, I know obviously in LA as well, but how you're going to how you're going to express your art. I think having more venues, more ways of doing that becomes more and more critical. So, like for you, with you recorded your own release, and that was a way of you getting your music out. Not just you playing somebody else's charts, but you getting your music out. What was that like for you? I mean, how did you feel in that process, and what were you hoping to create at that moment, and did you feel like you did it?
What I wanted to do was make a record that was made up of the kind of music that I dig. The kind of, man, I wish people did more music like this, those tunes, and they were of a different variety. I mean, they're not, I like popular music, but I like different versions of it. And so I wrote down some ideas that I had for grooves that I dig. And then I got a lot of help, frankly, from Wally Minko and from Gary Grant to turn those into something that was a finished product, But they were the only two songs on the album. There are only two songs on the album that I really had completed in my head, and one is track 3 and the other one's track 7, My Only Girl and Don't You Know. And those were songs that they just were very simple. First of all, they're not real complicated tunes, but they just sort of wrote themselves. It was real easy. I like songs with lyrics. As an instrumentalist, I like songs that have lyrics. A lot of guys who are instrumentalists, they listen to songs and they don't hear the words ever. And, it's like, have you ever heard the words to this? Like, oh, there's words. Yeah. There's a singer on this track, we listen with a different set of ears, but I come from listening to pop music a lot. And so I write lyrics and I wanted to make a record of the different kinds of stuff that I dig. I wanted every other song to have lyrics. I wanted every other song to be an instrumental, kind of an influence from the Nancy Wilson Cannonball Adderley album, where it was instrumental and back and forth to vocals. I wanted it to be not an album that focuses on me so much as it was an album that focuses on cool music with horns, right? And so I don't feel like I have, I didn't want to make a record. I've never been drawn to make a record that says, hey, check out how good I am. I don't think I'm that player, but I do feel like I want to make a record that said, hey man, check out what horns are in these kinds of tunes and how cool that is. Cause that's what I really dig.
Yeah.
And so in the case of something like Gonna Be Fine, which is we talked about earlier, I had the rhythm section groove all set up with it. And I brought it to Gary and I said, what I have. And he goes, well, what are we going to do with that? And I said, I don't know. What are we going to do with that? And so I said, Wally, hey, write a middle section for this that, we'll put this thing at the front. We'll put it again at the back, and then put something in the middle that takes it into a completely different room. So the listener just goes, hey, how did I get here? Oh my God, and Wally is really prolific writer. One of the greatest ever. And he did that masterfully. And then we didn't know what to do with the rest of it. And Gary said, I hear this as a vocal tune. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, and you should sing it. Well, A, we don't have a melody. B, we don't have any words. And C, I don't sing, And we put that together, and it's a very cool track. So much so that we use it as the opening track on the album. Yeah. And it all came together as through a process of a lot of people's input.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole album goes that way. There's a track on my album, if you're not aware of it, it's a tribute to Jerry Hay. It's the 4th track. It's called Hey Thanks. And it's an original composition by Wally. And it's extraordinary, really. It's the one track where we went, okay, let's do one track for the trumpet guys.
Yeah.
If we're going to make a record that's about what you think is cool about horns and music, let's put one together. The trumpet people are going to be jaw dropped. And Wally is real good for writing hard trumpet music. And I think he came up with something that's actually spectacular. And I think it'll hold up through the ages. It's really, really very proud of that track.
Yeah, when that release came out, that was on loop on my car stereo for some time. It was just I would just shake my head and play it again, and just it was just absolutely nuts. So
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, you know. I don't think it's something, if we were to ever try to do it live, I think I'd need two horn sections for it to put up all the layering and get all that in there. That's you know, embedded in the tune from the multi-tracking we did. But it's you know, it honors Jerry. Hopefully it honors him beautifully, because he's been such an influence on so many of us, and his contribution to music is, you know, undeniable. And you know, to put something together like that, it's a little tricky, and I think Wally really crafted it very, very wisely, and I think I hope he feels good about that, because it's definitely meant to honor his work.
yeah, well, yeah. Speaking of Jerry and Gary, I have been privileged enough to interview both of them for this show, and to me, that was when I reached out to Jerry. That was one of the most nerve-wracking times of my life, because I've idolized this guy for quite some time, and I kept saying to myself, he's not going to want to do this. He's, why would he want to do this? And he's Jerry Hay. And when he said, yeah, sure, it'd be honored to do it, and we talked, and he was just so cool. And then, Gary, I just interviewed Gary a few episodes ago, and Gary was just everything everyone told me Gary would be. He was just so funny and so entertaining. But those guys, to me, that was literally an oh shit moment. I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. As someone who's, in LA, who's doing all of these sessions, what have been those moments for you? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm working with this person.
It happens quite often now, I mean, the times I got to play with Jerry before he stopped playing were minimal, but there were some nice photo of John Lewis and Gary Grant and Jerry and I on Hairspray over at Old Todd AO. Where, I'm the guy with the shit-eating grin on my face. I guarantee it, man. And, Gary Grant has always been the ultimate hero to me. When I listened to all those records, I would play along with all those pop records and wait for the next one to come out. Couldn't wait for the next Al Jarreau record to come out and then learn it and play it. And next Earth, Wind & Fire record to come out. Can't wait to learn this one. And, I made it my business to find out how to meet Gary Grant before I moved to Los Angeles through a mutual friend of Dalton Smith, and rest his soul. And Gary was the guy. He went to North Texas. I first album I heard of his that I knew it was him was the Lab 68 album, where he's playing first trumpet on that and just destroying it. I mean, my God, And I was like, who is that? And I got to meet that cat. That's the sound. That's the approach. That's, and when he hooked up with Jerry, and they became what they are and were, it was just an undeniable sound and an influence. And so Gary would invite me to his house, say, come on, let's practice together. And I was new in town in my early 20s. I couldn't play with him. He'd play an exercise. I can't just, my God, it's him, and it's that guy, and became very good friends with the family. And as we all got closer, Lynetta, rest her soul, his wife, gave me a manicure for my wedding back in 1983. I mean, we became really, really close, and it blows my mind, anytime that I get to play with Gary, it's always like, wow, man, it's you, If he walks in a room, we're on a date and Wayne Bergeron are sitting there and Gary walks in a room, we'll play a fanfare as he walks in the room. It's like a bit. And he is the end, man. And I love him dearly, and I get emotional talking about it a little bit, but he influenced me a lot, and he was kind enough to come in on my project. And if if you like my album, I do. You can thank him largely for that. It just his work was extraordinarily, and hours, months of his life went into that, and he, you know, I owe him so much in so many different ways. If I go to work today, man, I'm sitting down and it's, you know, John Lewis, you know, Dave Washburn, Barry Perkins, you know, Rob Scher, Wayne Bergeron sitting next to me, and others as well. You just go like, I can't believe I get to play with these guys. You know, I get to go make money today, making music with these guys. How, you know, you know, go out with the Vine Street Horns and go play pop music all over the world, you know, with the biggest acts on the biggest stages, and just go, man, I get to do this with these guys, play this music at this level and make a living. You know, how fortunate am I? You know, never lost on me. You know, I really feel lucky to play with the people I play with, and we all learn from each other. You know, you want to be a small fish in a big pond, man, to get better. You know, learn from the people around you because they're just better. You know, I always feel like the people around me are my opportunity to learn something. You know.
Yeah, that's key. I mean, that really is, and you know, it's really interesting because, like, as you talk about, you know, working with Gary and you know, still having that level of awe and respect. It's sometimes it's hard for people to remember that, you know, the people that we do admire are still humans, you know, and
except for Chuck Finley.
Except for Chuck Finley.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, but you know, it's really funny, and you know, I'll go back to Wayne because yeah, he's been in many ways like my 6 degrees of separation for so many different things. And part of the inspiration for this, what planted the seed in my mind for this podcast, was actually because of a couple of hangs that I did with Wayne, and thinking like, well, I'm so lucky to be able to just, you know, spend a few days just, you know, hanging out and, you know, drinking coffee and, you know, having dinner with him and Barb and things like that. And said, you know, how many trumpet players wouldn't, like, you know, cut off their left arm, not the right, to be able to hang with somebody like this? And it's like, well, you know, and I started thinking about, well, how is it that I'm able to connect with people like that? And I think the biggest thing has been for me, it's just knowing that people are people, and not being, other than when it was Jerry, you know, not being afraid to just say, you know, hey dude, you know, how's it going? You know, do you want to go grab a beer or something like that, and just talk about life as two people, not like, you know, having these conversations where it's, I'm trying to get something from you, or, you know, the hero worship thing, which sometimes gets really, really tedious and old. But just, you know, being able to connect with someone on that real human level. And I think sometimes that we get so lost in the accomplishments of people that we lose sight of that they're just another person, and they just want to be talked to like another human. So, you know, it sounds like to me that especially with the guys that you work with, there's that wonderful level of respect and camaraderie that comes with understanding each other's accomplishments, but also just being able to just be real guys sitting in the room, just both, you know, everybody's just happy to be able to do something they love for a living.
Well, that Gary mentioned it to me years ago. You know, he said, you know, we're really all in competition here for the work. You know, all of us are trying to get the limited amount of work that's available, you know, but ultimately, he said, we got to remember that we're a fellowship. We can't lose sight of that, you know, and he's right.
Yeah, I think if more of us understand, regardless of whether it's music or, you know, we're looking at the craziness going on in the world of politics and things like that, if everybody just took the time to say, you know, hey, look, we're really all in this together, so let's just do our best to enjoy it and make it good for everybody. So, well, when you are working with, especially like the Vine Street, the gigs you do Vine Street, that has just got to be a major blast. I mean, not that sitting in the studio isn't a blast, but being on stage, there's certainly that energy of doing it, and to do it on that level when you're playing in those size venues. Well, not anymore, but when you were doing that, I mean, that had to be absolutely electrifying.
Absolutely. It's not my phrase, but it's the most fun you can have with your clothes on. It's absolutely amazing. And I feel very, very fortunate to have had these experiences. It's not only, the exhilaration of looking out there and I mean, and seeing, oh, it's Wednesday, another 50,000 people. I mean, it becomes like that when you're on a long tour. It's just an amazing thing to just go, man, I can't believe we're doing this again, but beyond that, it's the music that we're playing is so satisfying for me. As coming from a pop background and as my record is made up of that kind of music, because that's what makes me happy. I'm getting to play the music I love, and get to do that on top of it and get to make a fine living at it, with great musicians. It's really, really, really grateful for it. We played stuff that is hard. It takes you to the end of your ability. But really, if you get it, it's going to be like dazzling kind of pop music, the stuff we love. And I got to do that a lot, like for 20 years, just 30 years, just, and, how lucky am I to do that, really, we did a gig, man, there's a guy we worked with named Johnny Halliday. He's a French legend, and he passed away the last few years. But we did a gig with him once where to launch his next tour, we had done the tour prior, to launch his next tour, he put a stage up behind the Eiffel Tower and closed off the Eiffel Tower, and they wired it all up with pyrotechnics. And they made it a free concert. So behind the Eiffel Tower, you could go back about close to a mile before there's like a palace or something there. And they put 400,000 people outside to see the guy do one concert. And they filmed it all in HD, and, you're looking out on stage and you're going, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. We had a band feature in the middle. We had solos. If you want to look this up, his last name is Halllyday. Look up the Eiffel Tower concerts, Tour d'Eiffel, I think they called it. Concert at the Stade de France, where we sold out 3 nights at 83,000 people each night. That was the first gig we ever did with them. 250,000 people in 3 days. And it's just, we're out there just going, I can't believe this, but let's go kill it, man. Let's just go get this. And it's fun. It's fun with a capital F, man. And, Harry Kim put together the Vine Street Horns back in 1990, 91, and it just grew fast. And I've been fortunate enough to be part of that and have experiences that very few people get to have, frankly. Yeah. And I'm very grateful for it, man.
Well, I will put the link to that in the show notes. So just scroll down to the bottom and you can go and check that out. And also we'll have, there'll be a link down there for Dan's solo
release.
Not so old school.
Not the old school. So when you talk about pop music, because I mean, for me, like most people of our age, grew up playing primarily big band, and then cutting my teeth, also just doing a lot of pop gigs, and basically that's what I do now, is just doing the Brick House band circuit, and there is a certain joy that comes to it, mostly playing Jerry Hay horn charts, right. But there is certainly a different approach that you have to take to playing when you're playing those kind of charts, and especially when it's like a pounding gig. There's a certain kind of energy that's inherent in pop music, pop horns. So if you're going to say, hey, look, someone is interested in becoming more enmeshed in that world, what are some of the tips that you would give people, like things you should listen to, people you should listen to, concepts that you need to take away if you really want to make the best of playing pop music?
I think you hit it on the head. I think the key to it is listening to it. You can't speak a foreign language until you've heard it, and so listening to anything by Al Jarreau or Earth, Wind and Fire and all of that stuff, not so old school, frankly. If you want to hear some good pop music, horns on pop music, I recommend those highly, and learn them. When I was a kid, man, I just put on records and figured them out. You didn't write it out. You didn't ask somebody for a PDF. They didn't exist yet, but you learn by ear, and and find yourself in that rhythm section. Put on a Maynard record and learn how to play. Give it one or something, and now you're playing in Maynard's band in your living room. Or Earth, Wind and Fire. You're playing with Verdine White on bass now. You know what I mean? You can find out what it feels like to get that groove on. This is where drum corps really helped. Getting that projection of sound and putting stuff in front of you. Getting that sound out in front of you, like Jacoby used to always say. You don't approach it from an orchestral place. You'll be better at it the better your orchestral skills are, but you got to put on your pop music game, and that means you're going to belt this stuff out, and it's going to be crisp, and it's going to have intention, and it's very, very satisfying music for me, man. I come away from playing that kind of music just feeling exhilarated.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, depending on who the act is and the level of integration that the horns have with the act, a lot of times you're called on to be more of a visual aspect of the show as well, which is completely different than when you're sitting in the session booth cranking out a chart, and when you're being on stage, and when you have to be visual as well as playing the parts. Is that something that has been a part with your playing in Vine Street, and especially with some of the and I know with Setzer and things like that, where there are visual aspects of what you're doing. You're not necessarily doing choreography like you're playing with Beyonce, but there's that level of people are looking at you as well as listening to you.
Well, if you haven't already had one of these interviews with Harry Kim, I recommend that you do, for exactly the question you're talking about, because he's got very, very strong opinions and great advice on how to get that right, and it's one thing to record the music, it's another thing to perform it live, and visually speaking, it's critical. If we just stood up there and did our thing, you'd hear it, but the audience is going to get much more of a reaction if you're involved in the show. In '97 on the Phil Collins tour, we finally went with in-ear monitors. Prior to then, you had to be locked down and anchored to a monitor on the floor with a microphone. Well, once we could go in-ear monitors and with wireless microphones, we could do anything we wanted. And fortunately, the Vine Street Horns, we come from we kind of all came together over Latin jazz, So when you're performing Latin jazz groups as a horn section, you get a groove, while you're playing, and then it just sort of develops into more moves, and so when it came to pop music, we incorporated a lot of that into it, and then just take it a step further, and for the audience, and is the artist getting what he's paying for out of us, but it's way more fun. It's one thing to play the music, but it's another thing to get out there and do your thing. And so to a certain degree, it is choreographed, but we do it ourselves. We've never had anybody else tell us what we're supposed to be doing on stage. We've been fortunate. They go, hey, you guys, do your thing. They trust Harry enough to go, he's going to, and so, and it's instinctive. Hey, and not a lot has to be said sometimes about what we're going to do. You want to do that? Yeah, we know that one. Yeah, do that thing. And it evolves over the course of every tour, and it's a blast. You got to get out there and not be afraid to be silly, and not be afraid to look silly. And in fact, if you do it all together, it ends up not looking silly. It kind of looks cool. We also get kind of like these little vignettes that happen, especially on Phil Collins' band. You know, the background singers and the horns were all over the stage, and you get these little things, these little side stories that happen during tunes that turn into stuff, and it just becomes it's pretty fun, man.
Oh, that's cool. All right, well, we're gonna move into the final portion of the interview today, and I used to call this speed studies, but this has now been renamed the Rapid Fire Round. This is sponsored by my good friend Kenny Robinson with Robinson's Remedies. So this is the Robinson's Remedies Rapid Fire Round. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. The topics are going to bounce all over the place. Some of them are music related, some of them are not. So if you can just give me your best answers, I would appreciate it. Are you ready? Let's do this thing. All right, who's the biggest influence on your life that is not a trumpet player?
That's a hard one. That's a tough one, man. I don't really know the answer to that. My first answer is always Gary Grant, you know, and he's a trumpet player. My father, certainly, you know.
All right, we'll take Dad. All right, what's your favorite book?
Am I supposed to read books?
Arbans. Clark?
Oh, man. Yeah, Clark. Yeah, sure. I'll go with Clark.
All right. What's the worst movie you've ever seen?
Well, this only comes to mind because on Facebook somebody said, what was the movie that you saw when you were too young to see it? And there was this movie my folks took me to when I was a kid called Blood and Lace. And why they took a young kid to that movie, I'll never know, but it scared me to death, man. And it was I came across it a few years ago, just a horrible film. I'll say Blood and Lace.
Blood and Lace. Okay, that sounds horrible. If you weren't a trumpet player, what would you want to be?
Guitar player.
Rock and roll jeans. All right. What's your favorite drink?
What do you got?
What's free?
As a guy who doesn't drink anymore and hasn't for close to 25 years, my favorite drink right now is seltzer water.
Yeah, I've gotten on a big seltzer kick, man. That's
no calories, quench.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah, peach seltzer. That's one of my favorites.
I don't mind. It's all good to me.
You could have a dinner party and invite any three people in the world. Any three people in the world. Who would they be?
David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. People, that'd be the top one for sure. That's the first one that comes to mind. Well, Jerry and Gary, and if you're talking about heroes, that's what comes to mind. But I'd love to sit down with David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. That'd be the top guy I'd love to have a conversation with.
Yeah. You're going to have an additional three people. They can be any three people from history.
I don't know. I want to think about this one, It's really tough to answer. I really don't know, man. That's really hard to say.
Okay. Well, we'll give you a pass. You can call on the lifeline. You can call Gary if you want.
Call a friend.
Lacquer plated or raw?
I play on a silver plated trumpet now, so I'll say silver plated. I played on my trumpet. I had a New York Bach that I stripped down to raw, and I played on that through most of college, and almost killed the horn. Just completely rotted it out, kind of ruined it. So I'll say plated.
All right. What's your favorite quote?
When I was younger, I used to live by a quote that was by Leo Buscaglia, and it was, "It's not the goal that is life, but the trip." And I lived that to my detriment. And then I woke up one day,
Too much tripping.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. What is your greatest fear?
Getting found out.
you could, you're going to be granted one superpower, what would it be?
Fearlessness.
All right. What aspect of trumpet playing do you feel is the most overrated?
High notes.
What aspect do you think is the most underrated?
Good sound.
You're able to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice about music. What would it be?
Play as many varieties as you can. Take advantage of all the opportunities you're given, especially while you're young.
Okay. And you're going to give yourself one piece of advice about life.
Trust and know that all is well, in spite of appearances.
That's good advice. What do you want your legacy to be?
He did it in spite of how he felt.
Well, that is a great legacy to leave. I mean, I think that if more people did that, that fear and uncertainty holds back so much greatness. And, I can't remember who said this quote, but it's the thing that you desire most is, inside the cave that you fear it resides the thing that you desire most. So, it's being able to, despite the fear, to just move forward, even a step at a time, and, just keep moving on. So I really appreciate your honesty, and, I have found you to be an inspirational player, and, our time together today has, made me admire you that much more as a human. So I really appreciate you taking time to be with me today.
That's very kind. Thank you. Appreciate you asking me to be part of this.
Oh man, this is my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. And remember, check those show notes for the links to find out what's going on in the world of Dan, and to get a copy of his CD download, however you digest your music.
iTunes.
8 tracks, gramophones. I think you have the gramophone version of that available, Victrola.
Love that.
Just go back and listen to this. Make sure you share this with some friends, because especially if you've got friends who are interested in playing trumpet in the pop setting, listen to the things that Dan has to say, because it's some really, really golden nuggets there, man. Real good. So thanks again, Dan, and thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to this podcast. So as always, peace and slide grease. We are out. Hey, thank you so much for hanging with us today. This podcast is all about creating connection through our mutual love for the trumpet life. I hope that you learned a few things about today's guest and had some laughs along the way. Don't forget to give us a review. We love those 5-star ratings. And please share this podcast with your friends. We want to see our hang grow for show. Have a suggestion for a future topic or a guest? Hit me up at thetrumpetgurus@gmail.com. Our opening theme was written and performed by Lexi Signor, and all other music comes courtesy of The Greatest Funeral Ever. So in the words of W.C. Handy, life is like a trumpet. If you don't put anything into it, you don't get anything out. So go out there and let your trumpet sound. And I'll see you at the next hang.